everybody. I'm Barbara Hamley. Sometimes you find out about it from the White House delivered with great fanfare. Other times it's via a tweet, and then sometimes it's signed, sealed, delivered with hardly a whimper. I'm talking about new policies being implemented by the Trump administration, from tougher sanctions on Russia to the Justice Department and affirmative action. What is the true meaning behind the actions, and more importantly, why should all of us really care? Up next on Another View, some answers from history and law professor Dr. Eric Claville. Stay tuned for the award-winning Claville Report on Another View. We'll be right back.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. It's enough to make your head spin. Almost daily, President Donald Trump and his administration issue some new policy. But what's really going on behind the scenes? What do these policies mean to our everyday lives, and why should we pay close attention? Here with some answers is history and law professor Dr. Eric Claville with his Claville Report on policy in the Trump era. How you doing, Eric?
Wonderful. Glad to be here, Barbara.
And I'm so happy to have you here, too. So I want to start with a clip. You know, the pundits this week had a ball with the comments from the president saying fire and fury. Here's a clip from the Colbert Show a couple nights ago.
This past weekend, the UN imposed harsh sanctions on North Korea to try to get them to curb their nuclear program. North Korea responded by threatening revenge on the U.S. So, renowned deal artist Donald Trump saw their threat of apocalypse and raised them one Armageddon.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
Okay, so that was one thing. Then more recently, he has said, and I quote, where is the tweet from today? Military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded, should North Korea act unwisely. Hopefully, Kim Jong-un will find another path.
Right.
Where are we going to go with this, Eric? What's behind all of this?
Right. Well, about a half a year ago, maybe last year, we discussed what would happen during the Trump administration. And one of the things that I put on the table that I saw coming about was world conflicts on three fronts. One being, actually four fronts. One being in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans and the Baltics, with Russia bringing more aggression in the former Soviet bloc into Europe. The other being Syria and what's happening in the Middle East, also cyber warfare. And then finally, I talked about a problem that we're going to see in the China, the Southeast China Sea. And this is what we see in Asia. A lot of people look at North Korea as being an entity that works by itself. But in actuality, North Korea exists the way it exists because China allows it and wants it to exist the way it exists. Keep in mind that right next to the Korean Peninsula, you have Japan, which is an ally of the United States. In addition to that, right below that area, you have Guam, which is a territory of the United States.
It's owned by the United States.
Exactly. So we're stationed there, and we also have aircraft carriers in that area as well. What North Korea acts as a buffer against the United States for China. And keep in mind, right above North Korea is also Russia as well. So Russia is even though a lot of the area in Russia land is not habitable because of the conditions of coal, it still has territory there, and they're very cognizant of it. 85% of trade that happens with North Korea, export comes to China, and import also comes into China. So
North Korea is very important for China.
It's very important.
And China is very important for North Korea.
Exactly. And the relationship between China and the United States is a very delicate relationship because most of our production manufacturing happens in China. Economically, China holds the majority of the United States debt, and we borrow quite a bit from those countries as well. So it's a very, very, very tenuous situation between our two nations. As one commentator put it, we're Coke and they're Pepsi, and we had to kind of find out how to coexist and what deal will actually happen and make this thing work with China. If you look diplomatically, you have Mattis, who's saying that the diplomatic force between Tillerson, Haley, Secretary Haley for the United Nations, all of that is at work.
And as a matter of fact, Mattis said very recently that he would rather see the diplomacy continue as opposed to going a military route. Not that the military is not ready for it, but that diplomacy is in the works right now.
Exactly. And anybody who's served in the military, anyone who's seen war, any type of conflict, and those that remember the dropping of the 2 atom bombs in Japan on those 2 cities, unfortunately, we see the destruction that war causes, and we see the destruction of atom or nuclear weapons. And no one wants that. If nuclear weapons are fired on the Korean Peninsula in North Korea, it's not just going to affect North Korea. It's also going to affect China as well because, again, they border. It's also going to have an effect on Seoul. It's going to have an effect on Japan and an effect on Russia. So no one really wants that. However, you have 2 highly insecure and emotional leaders ramping up rhetoric that no one really wants to hear. You have Kim Jong-un, who is an individual who rose to power at age 28 as soon as his father died, who was a long-term beloved leader of that country, even though he was a dictator as well. However, he came into power, the son, very quickly, and in order to consolidate power, keep in mind, this is a young man that killed his uncle, his father's brother, and others within the family and also the military regime and government to consolidate power. And anyone who kills their own uncle, okay, we haven't seen anything like this since Lenin and Stalin and those dictators or czars of Russia. I mean, this is a very interesting character that we have there.
And I mean, he has shown in many different ways his propensity for making rash decisions and for and all the testing that has been going on. So why would our president not recognize that that perhaps it behooves us to have an even softer footprint, if you will,
right?
As we go, as we try to negotiate this thing.
Sure. Unfortunately, we have a leader who's also very emotional, very insecure. I mean, it's something about being having your ego stroked. I mean, he has his name on everything he owns: Trump Tower, Trump National Golf Course. He has the Trump airplane. So that tells you a little bit about his personality. In addition to that, you have someone who's used to conducting business unilaterally in his personal business life. So, and he's taken amazingly social media and he's conducted legislative process. He's conducted world diplomacy. He's conducted campaigning all through his fingertips in tweeting. And that is absolutely amazing.
An article in the New York Times quoting the president says, frankly, this is the president speaking, frankly, the people who were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough, he told reporters at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. They've been doing this to our country for a long time, for many years, and it's about time that somebody stuck up for the people of this country and for the people of other countries. So if anything, maybe that statement wasn't tough enough. I mean, there's this bravado, but he's speaking to somebody who likes that same bravado. I mean, at what point, how do we get people to step in and say, hey, but whoa, everybody, take a breath?
Right. Well, right now you have 2 individuals on the playground, and the proverbial
who's the bigger
game,
bully?
Right? Who's the bigger bully game that starts a fight and nobody wins? The baddest one hit my hand, now hit him, and that's what you're looking at. I mean, and Kim Jong-un, he called Trump's rhetoric nonsense, a load of nonsense, and they're going to be ready to launch missiles within weeks at Guam. And, honestly, I think you have to take him at his word that he will do it, because what North Korea knows it has right now it has 200,000 troops on the border of China ready to defend North Korea in the event that something happens. So any action against North Korea that we take as a preemptive strike, China has already stated that they will defend North Korea and look at it as a strike against them. However, they also stated that if North Korea strikes the United States first, it will remain neutral and not allow and not come in to defend North Korea. But you really can't believe that, because if any strike against North Korea destabilizes North Korea, then China knows that the next thing that's going to happen is that they believe that the United States gets a little closer to them.
So who is North Korea listening to? Are they listening to Donald Trump, or are they listening to the diplomats and those who are trying to bring this to a conclusion through diplomacy?
Kim Jong-un is listening to Donald Trump. Okay. You do have individuals within the North Korean government and also allies with China who are listening to the diplomats. And again, there are back channels that are working these negotiations. So feel confident and confident with that, and be as Tillerson said, sleep easy. However, I don't think that really works with people in Seoul. I don't think that really works with people in Guam who have come out of nowhere as being the target. I mean,
because they're not sleeping easy.
No, they're not. I mean, they're saying we haven't done anything, we haven't said anything, and all of a sudden we're now, ground zero for determining if this is the next conflict that we're going to have. Also, I like to remind the listeners is that we still have several wars that we're involved in. We have Afghanistan, which is the longest running war now that we've had in modern U.S. history, where no one really sees an end in sight, and how we actually got into Afghanistan after 9/11, and we didn't have a plan when we actually went in. We were like, we're going to be able to just overtake them and everything will be fine. In addition to that, we also went into Iraq, and we went into Iraq and fractured that country into three factions. And we're still fighting that, and we're fighting ISIS or ISIL, depending on how you categorize them. Mm-hmm. And we're also fighting the Syrian government, who's also backed by Russia. So, I mean, and you have a destabilized Middle East and Northern Africa, from Libya to Tunisia to Egypt, that we actually destabilized under the Obama administration. Of course, Iraq was destabilized in Afghanistan under the Bush administration. But, you're looking at a major part of the world where you really don't know what's going to happen day to day.
Do we have enough truth? Lisa just sent me a note here saying that the Guam Homeland Security and Office of Civil Defense released a 2-page fact sheet on social media and its website. The fact sheet tells people how to prepare for an attack, what to do if an attack actually occurred. I mean, they're taking this very seriously.
They are. And I remember being in elementary school during the Cold War era. And this is where, the U.S.
It's back to when I was in school, we used to hide under the desk when we were worried about with the Cold War.
Now, I had no idea, I don't know what they thought that desk was going to do to protect us. But at least it gave us some comfort that we would be okay, but of course you're not. Because keep in mind, a nuclear war, after the nuclear bomb hits, whatever target it hits, of course, there is immediate destruction and death to those individuals within a certain radius of that explosion. However, the way it affects the world is that you have the nuclear fallout and also the nuclear holocaust that comes after that. And that's something that no one wants to see.
Wow, that's just incredible. I mean, I'm looking at some of the things that they include that you should do. Just if you're curious out there, look for concrete shelters near your home. Don't look at the fireball. It can blind you. Lie flat on the ground and cover your head. When possible, take a shower with lots of soap and water. I mean, it doesn't, from reading that, it doesn't sound like it would be, that bad, but really this is major destruction if this were to happen.
Yeah, and who has a concrete shelter near their house?
Well, exactly. Now, especially now. And I mean, and on Guam, it's an island, right? And I tell you, it's just really frightening. And no one seems to be able to control the president or get him to understand that in diplomacy, words are the things that matter.
They mean a
lot.
And we have now an administration. Keep in mind, the Republicans have been telling the American people for 8 years in the Obama administration, put us in power and we'll be able to legislate. However, they ran on a platform of hate and uncertainty during the Obama administration, saying that everything that he's doing is bad for the United States. The Affordable Health Care Act, known as the popular name of Obamacare, is the worst thing that happened to America. We're going to repeal and replace. And now they're like a turtle on his back, on his shell. They simply cannot do anything. You have the Republican Party that has control of both houses, the Congress. They have the presidency, and in effect, they also have a 5-4. If you look at Kennedy and the way he votes on
the Supreme Court,
right, on the Supreme Court as it relates to non-civil rights issues, so economic issues and so forth, he votes conservative down the line. They also control the Supreme Court. So the Republicans and the conservatives actually have control of the entire government.
But they have control, but yet they're not moving. They can't get anything accomplished.
Exactly. And that's the frustration of a lot of individuals. I think a lot of Republicans are going to pay a price in their districts, but they're going to pay a price not to the Democratic Party. They're going to pay a price to more extremist conservatives that are going to back Donald Trump. And the reason why I say that is because the Republican Party actually created the candidate of Trump and the presidency of Trump, because they gerrymandered their way into districts that actually are Trump supporters. So when people say, he has 34% approval rate, that's that 34% in every Republican district that is the base of the Republican Party that says, hey, I believe what he's doing. They need to leave him alone. He's doing a great job.
And because the way that he speaks it plays directly into what they believe. So they look at this as actually defending the United States, defending America, and so forth, as opposed to what very real things can happen, because he seems to be just speaking so much off the top of his head. Yesterday's press conference, he said that he would thank Vladimir Putin for kicking out the diplomats because it will help us save money on payroll. I mean, how can we have a president who doesn't understand how government works?
He said a lot of statements that I thought were absolutely deplorable. I thought diminished the office of the president. But when he made that statement, I just one thing came to my mind: how disgusting, how disgusting, how disgusting to those civil service workers who put their lives on the line and for diplomacy. The Secretary of State's office really doesn't get a lot of credit as it relates to doing the work of the country in dangerous situations. But they're at various embassies. They're in countries that are hostile to us. And when you're in a country like Russia, when you're at other countries that we're at war at, these individuals do a very, very important job to help us in our relationship with that country and to keep peace. And to say he's going to thank them for firing or expelling them because it's going to save payroll, I mean, that's absolutely horrible. And secondly, they don't get paid because they're in the embassy. They're coming back home. They're still on the payroll.
Exactly. And Putin does not pay them.
No, he does not.
That's the thing I was just...
And if I'm in the State Department, I'm saying to myself, we have a president that doesn't support us at all. And we have a president who is not given the Secretary of State, Tillerson, who I believe his mindset and his reasons are in the right place. And I think he's shown it in his talks now and about North Korea. But I have some trepidation if I'm in the State Department and a lot of other agencies, the Department of Education, the EPA, and other places as well. And we may not even get to the report that came out about climate change, but we've talked about it before, how that's very important, especially in the Norfolk area. We see New Orleans,
Absolutely.
My home state, and what's happening there. We're going to see a lot more of that. And you have a president, even Miami is now looking at contingency plans of really Miami, certain parts of it not existing in our lifetime because of sea level rise, which is a reality. And you have scientists that released a report because they don't trust this president.
And there was a report that even came out that the North Pole is melting. I mean, they're talking about shipping through there. Yeah. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. We're talking about Trump policy and the way that it's delivered, and whether or not there's thought behind the implementation and how the administration is speaking to us, and why does it matter to us. 440-2665 or 1-800-940 212-440-2240. So one of the things that the president seems to like to do also publicly is to verbally upbraid, if you will, those who are in his cabinet who he disagrees with because they haven't accomplished what he'd like to accomplish. I think we have a clip concerning Mitch McConnell. Let's play that one.
This is, clearly a disappointing moment. From skyrocketing costs to plummeting choices and collapsing markets, our constituents have suffered through an awful lot under Obamacare. We thought they deserved better. It's why I and many of my colleagues did as we promised and voted to repeal this failed law. We told our constituents we would vote that way, and when the moment came, most of us did. We kept our commitments. We worked hard, and everybody on this side can certainly attest to the fact that we worked really hard to try to develop a consensus for a better way forward.
And that was Senator Mitch McConnell talking about what happened when the vote to overturn Obamacare failed. Then in the recent press conference that our president did, he said he assailed Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, for not passing his legislative priorities, calling it disgraceful that the party's health care plan failed by one vote, and hinting that the leader should step down if he cannot do better. I mean, is that the way to? We know what happened with Jeff Sessions. He spent a whole week talking about Jeff Sessions and what happened with the Justice Department in light of the Russia probe. So this whole upbraiding of people within his cabinet, effective tool to get them to do what he needs done?
Absolutely not. If you are a Republican, and even if you're not. You just have to really shake your head at the total chaos that Congress is in right now and the White House. There's absolutely nothing they can agree upon. And I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. I think the health care bill that the Republicans wanted to put up, which Congressman Boehner, former Speaker Boehner and myself, and many others said, there's no way they could put up one because they never did one in 30 years he was in Congress. But it is the picture perfect example of legislative hypocrisy that we've ever seen in our country. Because for 8 years, they mentioned this apocalyptic, picture that if we don't repeal this, then the country's going to fail. And when it didn't happen, they said, we're going to go on to tax reform, So in other words, the world wasn't really going to end on that day. So, exactly. We're not going to we're going to stop selling T-shirts about it. But what you also find is that the president, I've never seen a president take at a party and really diminish them. I mean, the things that he said about Mitch McConnell, to me, just not as a politician, but as a man, you have to really address that because he's questioning a lot of things about your integrity and so forth.
So, Eric, is President Trump really a Republican?
No.
Or did he just use the party so that he could get into office?
Yeah, he used the party to get into office because he saw it as the best pathway forward to get the presidency. Because he, it's part of his playbook. He was able to manipulate the voters in that area, and the way he talks to their issues, it works very well for him. So he couldn't do that as a Democrat because Democrats tend to be more in tune to a lot of issues, especially when you look on the East, what we call the East, the coastal Democrats. You tend to be more highly educated and so forth. So, and then again, for all the listeners, these are statistics and categories that political scientists look at, and also political consultants. So again, don't shoot the messenger. But no, he was never able to do that.
If you're just joining us, my guest is Hampton University history and law professor Dr. Eric Claville with the Claville Report on policy during the Trump era. My name is Barbara Ham Lee. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Let's talk to Don in Norfolk. Hi, Don. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
Afternoon it is. I just wanted to respond to the statement that we talk about Trump saying that it would reduce the payroll. The reason why I'm calling about it is because earlier, or a couple days ago, on a different program, I heard that that reduction could come from local embassy staff, which would be like foreign national or local Russian nationals that would no longer be paid, and that would actually reduce the payroll.
Do you know, Eric? You want to respond?
I mean, in every country, you do have individuals in that host country that, do work around embassies and so forth. But that's not what the president was talking about. He was actually referring to the individuals that were dispelled, which are our operatives and our employees and citizens of this particular state. So, I mean, I understand other news stations trying to spin it in that way, just as the Sanders was saying how, don't take the president serious. It was just a joke that he was making about congratulating Putin for dispelling our operatives there. I mean, it's just spin, but that's not what he was referring to.
And I guess we could compare it to when we dispelled Russian diplomats under the Obama administration. When they left, we weren't paying for them to be here. No, Russia paid for them to be here in this country. So it's just the reverse.
And again, that was also one of the sanctions placed upon Russia for the 2016 mailing in the elections, which every single United States agency that investigates these things all concluded that Russia did. So and when you pass legislation through Congress 98-2, with only 2 individuals not voting for it in the Senate and putting these sanctions on Russia, that speaks volumes.
Absolutely. Kenny joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Kenny. You're on the air.
Hi. How are you all today?
Okay. How are you?
Okay. I'm doing well. Dr. Lavelle, I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe play devil's advocate here a little bit, but it's so easy for us to demonize North Korea and how they isolate themselves and how they target the West and the U.S. And going back to the Korean War, that is, fresh in their history. We dropped a lot of bombs on the Korean Peninsula. We caused a lot of havoc on the Korean Peninsula, and they have built their lives around ensuring that we don't get a chance to do that again. So my question is, what do you think about maybe us shifting our view and how we deal with North Korea? Because we have to realize that we're responsible for North Korea to some effect.
Okay, Kenny, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it. Eric?
Yeah, Kenny, I thank you so much for going back into history because it's very important. The Korean War that we had is something that still exists today because of our troops that exist on that parallel. I mean, we have American troops, we have North Korean troops that are facing down each other and have been every single day for decades, and is one of the hotbeds in the world where anything can happen. But you're exactly right as it relates to not just North Korea, but more specifically Kim Jong-un securing his place and his status in North Korea because and he's not looking at the Korean War, but he's looking at what happened to Omar Gaddafi. Omar Gaddafi gave up the developing of nuclear weapons and did what the Americans wanted him to do. And what ended up happening, he ended up being killed in the street after his country was destabilized in part by what factions that we supported. So you can look at that from that perspective. However, as it relates to a nuclearized North Korea in the safety of the world, I think it's very irresponsible for the world to allow North Korea to get that weapon.
And to go that far. Let's talk to Derek in Norfolk. Hi, Derek. You're on the air.
Hello. How you doing?
Hey.
Pleasure to speak to y'all. Donald Trump and his administration as a whole, they have one play in their playbook. It's the same small group of people that they're pandering to. I believe a lot of this going on, even the blustering that's going on over the last few days, is to continue to sell fear, to try to find some way to solidify better poll numbers for him. And, I mean, you look at the way he's tearing into civil rights and every other move that his administration is making, and it's just simply catering to that small base of people that got him where he is today. It's just continuing on.
Okay, Derek, thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it. You want to respond?
Yeah, no, Derek is exactly right. With his with the attack on the affirmative action programs within universities,
we can talk about that next.
That's a dog whistle to the base. If you look at the numbers and the statistics, as the Supreme Court did in the Texas versus Fisher affirmative action case of 2016, you'll see where the court even saw not the impact that they're making against admissions, but actually they actually upheld that race can serve as a factor of many factors.
It can't be the only factor,
right,
but it can serve as a factor.
Right, based upon past, and let's be honest with this, we're looking at 400 years of commemoration of Africans in America, and the first 7/8 of African Americans' existence was not being able to access avenues for the American dream, which included education. Here in our state, we actually shut down public schools in Richmond or in the county outside of Richmond for 5 years, not to allow integration. So a lot of universities are looking at options and try to attract individuals, not just applicants, but also to enroll those individuals.
So Eric, talk to us very specifically about what it is that Sessions is trying to do. Right now, he has put out a one ad, if you will, for attorneys who are involved with affirmative action. But what is it that they want ultimately to do?
Sure. Basically, they just want to end any type of affirmative action programs across not just the federal government, but which they're throughout society, and they're attaching that attack to any funds that anyone receives through the federal government. Which, if you think about it, if you're not a religious organization, everybody receives funds through the federal government through some way, even if it's $1, you receive it. But the Supreme Court, as I stated, has already spoken to this. The law is settled as it relates to affirmative action programs in higher education, and as long as these universities stay within that realm of the Supreme Court decision, then they'll be fine. So really, the universities have absolutely no fear from the Department of Justice as long as they continue with their programs that abide by the Supreme Court. But Irvin Chemerinsky, mentor of mine and also constitutional law expert. He writes the constitutional law that all of us use in law school. He wrote a piece in Chronicles of Higher Education, which is very true. He said that the fear is not from the Department of Justice for the reasons I just stated. The fear is if you're looking at programs that help to correct the wrongs of society without a major impact on all society, meaning white society, then your fear is possibly Trump being able to appoint two more very conservative, extreme conservative justices, with Kennedy looking to retire this year or next year. And who knows, Ginsburg, if her health holds up, she's been battling pancreatic cancer for probably the longest person I've ever known to battle pancreatic cancer. You're looking at possibly within the next 3 years, two more Supreme Court justices appointed by Donald Trump.
And then if they change the law, if they change what the Supreme Court has already decided, that becomes very problematic then.
Right, that becomes law for the next 25 to 40 years, and which is very important because it's going to take that long for justices to cycle off. It's going to take that long to see what's called the disparate impact, which is you look at studies across a large period of time to determine what is the negative impact based upon the law that was passed. Kind of like what we saw with mandatory minimums during the time of what we call the crack revolution and locking people up as opposed to the treatment that people are seeking with the opioid national crisis.
Yes, exactly, because it is now a national crisis.
It's a national crisis. And again, that's hypocrisy to its greatest because, individuals saw crack as a black drug, and they demonized the victim, saying it was their responsibility. And now that opioids is affecting more whites, whether it be suburban or rural, is seen as a national epidemic.
So this base of Donald Trump's is not very affluent. Am I correct in that? Tell me the demographics. Let's talk a little bit about that because I'm so curious as to why the decision was made on his part to pander to this group when it seems like they don't have a lot of political power or clout. So where's the disconnect for me?
Sure. So again, this is analyzing what took place pre-election and then post-election. So again, this is the analysis coming forward. So listeners, don't shoot the messenger here. But
just analysis,
right? But
okay.
Those that will admit that they are supporters of Donald Trump today. As a matter of fact, that was on MSNBC today. There was a piece where they went to a county in Pennsylvania that went for Obama and then went overwhelmingly for Trump. And pretty for the most part, this is an area that was supported by a mill or a factory and so forth. So you had a lot of white, non-college educated males and females in that particular area, and a lot of them said, we support him 100%. I like what he's doing. I think he's doing a great job. He's accomplished a lot. And the question was, accomplished a lot for what? On immigration. He's tough. He talks tough and so forth. And these are individuals that see an America that used to exist, 25 years ago, where in those that are old enough, 50 years ago, pre-civil rights, they saw America where the white male was the status symbol of all power, not just in America, but also in the world. Now, this generation, these individuals have seen an America really become the America it always should have been.
The true melting pot.
Right, the true melting pot. So you're seeing more people of color. You're seeing more doctors of color, and not just African-American doctors because there is a shortage, but you're seeing more East Indian doctors, you're seeing more Asian medical doctors. You're seeing more individuals, immigrants coming to the country and buying these stores that shut down that were mom and pop and taking them over. So now you're seeing, not in their mind, they're seeing the white male status diminishing. And what Trump does, he speaks to that, and overtly and many, many times, and also subtly when he talks to those particular voters. And when he talks about immigration, building a wall, every president has wanted, and every administration has wanted to secure certain borders on the Mexican-American border. However, that a lot of that land is private. The terrain is very rough in a lot of areas. And even the Obama administration found that, very hard to try to do when they want to secure some areas. However, unfortunately, you have individuals out of Mexico who have become the face of illegal immigration, and that's just not the case. When you talk about individuals who are non-documented, it's also been targeted at individuals who are what we call highly educated skilled workers. So in the tech industry, you get a lot of individuals from Asian countries, a lot of individuals from Eastern European countries that don't really speak, that have their accent, and you can hear it. We're talking whether it be Germans or others from Eastern European countries, and a lot of East Indians that come into the country. So it's affected them as well. But in addition to that, a lot of those voters, they've seen their wealth decrease as well and opportunities for jobs because companies, the majority of companies in America, and these companies that have left America, are headed by shareholders, officers, which are presidents, CEOs, vice presidents. Those white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males have lobbied for legislation and moved those companies to other countries
so they
for
don't
lower
have to pay
wages.
taxes, right.
They don't have to pay taxes. So their anger is now at the lowest hanging fruit. People of color that they see progressing, or they perceive as progressing around them, and not really dealing with the individuals that create the laws and the policies that have diminished the economic power of those families in the Rust Belt, in Ohio, Pennsylvania. And, for the most part, you talk about coal in West Virginia, which is it's a very interesting study because coal is a diminished source of power in the world because of how bad it is for you to even get it out of the ground, but on your health, but also it harms the environment.
The environment
as
too. There was a CNN poll that shows while 83% of Republicans still approve of Trump, the number who strongly approve of him has declined from 73% in February to 59% today.
Yeah, and those individuals that say they still approve of Trump, those individuals that say, well, and
Wait, hold one thing. So Trump's biggest decline is coming from those making between $30,000 and $50,000 per year. 40% of this group approved of Trump last month, but it's down to 27% today. And I think that goes back to the economics that you were talking about, because he promised all these jobs and that, he was going to make things better, make America great again in terms of the economy, and that really hasn't turned around for a lot of people.
Right, and he can't do that. That has to be done through Congress. And this Congress, they're scared because they know that he speaks to a very important 1/3 base in their district that can turn on them at any time, and they can be primary, which means that they can actually not be the candidate running on the Republican ticket in their reelection. But I wanted to make a quick point as it relates to that poll. The 83% of Republicans say they still approve of Trump. They're looking at what is the alternative, and what has been talked about and spun on other talk radio stations and news stations that, well, if we didn't have Trump, we'll have Hillary Clinton. So you're still demonizing the Clinton and the Democrats, saying, well, at least you have us, because if not, then this is what you'll have.
So, well, I have another question, but I'm going to go to the phones, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Joe joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Joe. You're on the air.
How you doing?
Hey.
I have a lot of questions, but I guess I have to be careful what I ask. I just don't, it's hard to tell the difference between one president and another. I don't understand the White House or Congress or the justice system. They don't, it just hasn't shown any proof that we're going in the right direction, no matter who's in the White House or who's in Congress.
So your overall frustration is, no matter who's there, you're still not seeing what you need. Is that your point?
Just through history and what's written down, what's like the Vietnam War or Afghanistan. I mean, these are messes. They're expensive messes that cost a lot of lives. I mean, in some ways, this country learns from certain things, like in those wars. But
okay, all right.
Overall,
Let's let Eric respond to you. Thanks for the call, Joe. We appreciate it.
Yeah, Joe actually has the frustration that a lot of Americans have. I talk about individuals like myself who are in academia, or individuals who are journalists and so forth. We have the opportunity to sit down and read and dissect these things on a daily basis.
Yes, we do.
However, the average American is working, trying to make ends meet, and they look at their paycheck at the end of the week, 2 weeks, or month and see, and for them, that's the America that works. But America, D.C. is working for those that really control D.C. And if you have access, if you have wealth, if you have influence, it works for you. Unfortunately, the military-industrial complex is one of the largest industries that wealth is created, how wealth is created in this country. If you look at a lot of individuals, a lot of companies, whether it be Boeing, whether it be our shipyard here, they're dependent up on contracts that come from the federal government. If you look at lobbyists and legislation that they lobby congressmen for, and also individuals around Congress, those are to benefit them. So the two things that I want to get to very quickly on the show is the tax plan that's coming up, and also what's happening with the Trump investigation. Keep in mind that you have a presidency and a Republican Congress that are finally going to get down to the business of those that they represent. They represent big business. They don't represent the common man. For anybody that voted Republican, thinking that the Republican Party and this president was going to do something for you if you're an average, what we call the average Joe, you were sadly mistaken, and you were sold a bill of goods. The Republican Party has never passed a social program to help anybody. Okay, and the tax cuts that they talk about, from trickle down,
big business,
exactly, from trickle down economics to now wanting to cut the corporate tax rate, that's to help the wealthy. If you're wealthy, you're not going to reinvest and bring more money back into the country so you can pay high wages.
You're going to reinvest in yourself.
Yeah, you're going to reinvest in yourself. You're going to find cheaper labor.
Sure.
I mean, and you, as a shareholder, if I owned part of a company and I had an officer that came in to tell me, a president saying, we want to bring more jobs here, which is going to pay higher wages and decrease our profit margin, we're going to bring up a vote of no confidence, because we want higher profits. They want that extra yacht. Okay, 55th yacht is good, but we really want 75. So that's the mindset of those individuals in that
So
area.
this tax reform is really going to benefit them as opposed to the rest of us.
Hands down.
In terms of what's going on.
Hands down. Now, the average person is going to get a few percentage tax cut, but the 20% tax cut and 15% that Trump really wants for corporations, those are the individuals that are going to actually benefit the most, because keep in mind, it's going to cost the country $4 trillion over 10 years to give this tax cut. That's from the Office of Governmental Accountability. And that number is solid. And Steve Mnuchin, who I believe is one that is probably next to Steve Bannon, one of the most dangerous persons in the Trump administration, he's pushing that for Wall Street and big business. He says, we're going to make it back on 4% increase of the economy. You can't increase the economy by 4% if you have no jobs. And the jobs that are coming that we need in its fourth industrial revolution, the American population simply are not prepared for it. So you're going to look at a lot more deficit spending. You're going to look at a lot more cuts in social programs as well.
So will Congress, in fact, make a new tax law?
They will.
So you think that will pass? In other words, unlike what happened with the Affordable Care Act.
Right, and it really depends on what the Democrats do, because they also want tax adjustment and tax reform. However, if it's too high, they're not going to go along with it. If it's if the tax cut's too high, they're not going to go along with it. If the tax cuts are too low, I doubt if the Republicans go along with it. So you just don't know.
Okay, let's go to Sarah in Virginia Beach. Hi, Sarah. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wondered, after the next 3.5 years of Donald Trump, do you think America will be able to bounce back?
Okay, we'll get an answer for you. Thank you, Sarah. What do you think, Eric?
That's a very interesting question. We hope so, because what really determines that is what happens in Asia. Okay, because after the "Make America Great" slogan took hold at the Davos Conference, the World Economic Forum, the president of China was elated that this was Donald Trump's policy, because he stated that this is going to make China great. So we're going to see what happens in Asia. We may end up being sharing dominant power between China and the United States after these 3 years, but again, it really depends on what happens in Asia.
So as we start to wrap up, and I know the phones are still lit up, let's see. Can we take one more call? Let's go to Judy in Virginia Beach. Hi, Judy. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you, Barbara. You please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm so tired of hearing about the Senate saying they did not, the Republicans didn't come together and pass this skinny repeal. If I'm correct, they wanted it passed, but hoped just to say that they passed it, but hoped that the House would not pass it because it was such a terrible bill. So what is the big deal about? I mean, they just wanted to say we did what our people wanted us to do, and we passed the repeal.
Okay, Judy, let's let Eric respond. Thank you for the call.
Judy, very astute of you. You're exactly right. Nobody liked that bill. It was terrible. Okay, because keep in mind, they tried to do a full repeal. That didn't work. The same bill that they passed 60 times when Obama was president. And then when they have the chance to actually pass it, they're like, I don't think we really want to do that, because this is going to decimate our constituents and our communities. What the Republicans really don't want to admit is that the Affordable Care Act, in its inception, was really a good idea, because it was a conservative think tank idea from the Heritage Foundation. Obama just simply adopted it and thought he could get them on board to actually work with them. But they utilized the Affordable Care Act, which is a conservative idea, and they attached it to him to demonize President Obama. Now they're in a quandary because that's their idea, and they really don't know what to do and how to fix it.
So we've got about 4 minutes left in the show, and I want to really get down to how do we separate the noise from what we really need to pay attention to as everyday citizens? What do we need to be doing so that we can make sure that we are on top of the things that are about to happen to us or could potentially happen to us?
Well, I said this before in March on the last Claville Report. Pay attention to this Russia investigation. Right now, the special prosecutor, which is Robert Mueller, who is probably Trump's worst nightmare, because when he fired Comey, Steve Bannon didn't want him to do that because Comey was kind of compromised both politically because of what he did with Clinton and what he didn't do and so forth. But Robert Mueller has the respect of everyone. I mean, he is the man. And with this grand jury that has been assembled and the FBI raid into Paul Manafort's house at 3 o'clock in the morning, when the FBI comes with guns drawn, and keep in mind, that's a very scary situation because he had just testified the day before, and basically they knew he lied. So they went in to get the documents that they requested in order to prove that which they already know. So you're looking at Paul Manafort, you're looking at Carter Page, you're looking at Jared Kushner, and unfortunately looking at Trump's son, all being major targets of this grand jury to actually tell the truth of what's taking place. And Trump, you know, he has many things to hide in his relationship with Russia, and I mean, open your eyes. This is real, because he never would have fired these individuals. Told the Russian consulate that, you know,
about the adoption and all that.
Yeah, about the adoption, which he wrote the letter. Okay, he lied about it, but then he said, okay, well, I chimed in as a father would. And in addition, he told Russia, the representative, that he got rid of this Russia investigation and so forth. Unfortunately, this is going to be a very, very, very bad situation for Trump and his family because of the business dealings with Russia and the Russian banks in 2008, 2009, after no one was loaning them money.
So once but it will affect Trump. What does that mean for us?
Sure. What that means for us is that now you have a president who is anxious to get this from around his neck, and the only way, this is me, the only way that you can detach yourself and get the country mind off of Russia is to start another military conflict. You know,
Eric, that's heavy.
I mean, you look at Nixon, and he was entangled with the Vietnam at that particular time. In addition to that, you also notice it took 2 years for Watergate to come from its inception to what we got with Nixon actually resigning and the truth coming out. So you're looking at about the 2.5 to third year of Trump administration where you see this thing come together. But look, I've been saying it for the last 2 years. I mean, we are ready for a reset in this world, geopolitically, geoeconomically, and the war, again, it's really just really fine. Asia is the place that you need to look at. And I would not be surprised if Trump does some unilateral action, which he can do as president, launch missiles at something in North Korea, a military base or something to show his strength, and then North Korea retaliating, and then you see a major buildup like we saw during the Bay of Pigs, possibly during the Kennedy administration. So I believe that's at our doorstep, and I think it's going to happen very soon.
Well, I guess the one thing we should hope for then is that we have the same outcome as we did with the Bay of Pigs, which means it doesn't happen.
I don't think so, because the Kennedy administration actually had advisors and so forth around them, and really luck was on his side. This president is ramping this up tremendously, and he doesn't know how to back down. He doesn't know how to, quote unquote, lose. Absolutely. He only knows how to win.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric Claville, again, for another fabulous Claville Report. This has just been incredible. We will keep our eyes and ears open, definitely. Very powerful discussion today and so much to think about. So why not listen to this show again via podcast? Visit anotherviewradio.org, iTunes, WHRO.org, or any other place you go for your podcast listening pleasure. Next time on Another View, how a 70-something white man and a 40-something-year-old white black woman can help you navigate your love life. Should be an interesting conversation. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and our phones were answered today by Marcus Troop and Trey Watson. I'm Barbara Hamley. Thank you so very, very much for listening to Another View.